All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Let's Discuss. Today, we're going to be talking about decision fatigue. And as always, I'm sat down here with an incredible person, Keenan Hart. He's the co founder of Francis. And we're going to talk about decision fatigue. We're going to get into it. And I love starting these off by saying, Keenan, why is decision fatigue so important to you?
Dude, I mean, like we only have so much brain power each day. And so the topic of decision fatigue is very interesting to me because if you have to wake up every single day and before you get to your major decisions of the day, and you have to waste your mental power and your energy on 100 micro decisions, it only makes sense when I visualize that we only have so much computing power. And so when I think about making some of the big decisions in my life, I want to make sure that I am fully rested, I feel good, I have a good mindset about me. I feel calm. I'm not rushed. And making good decisions kind of as we start escalating in the, life's order of creating more value for people really comes down to how do we make good decisions consistently? And I really love this topic of discussion. So I'm excited to get into it with you today.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. I was the very same way. I remember my eyes were open to this idea that our thought actually takes energy. And when you start chewing into that, it just can ruin the rest of your day. And I noticed before I started into all of this, I used to play a lot of video games.
Mm-hmm.
And the video games I played were quite decision intensive. And what would happen was if I started my day, I'd be like, oh, I've got a couple hours. I'll just play a couple games and then I'll get into my day. That time would just take so much mental energy away from me. The rest of my day would be ruined. I wouldn't be able to go through creative exercises. I couldn't think about important things. And I didn't notice it at the time, but that was a huge part of it. I was burning through so much decision making energy
Mm-hmm.
by playing video games at 10 o'clock in the morning. So that's thankfully a habit that I've given up now and I don't do anymore. But it was very noticeable. Very,
Yeah.
very noticeable.
I think when we partake in activities like that, and I have nothing against video games whatsoever, but like that sense of self-awareness that you started to deploy and being like, I don't make as good decisions when I'm doing this activity is something that I think we can all take a lesson from. One of the biggest things that I kind of have a mental note in my head is an interview that I listened to with Jeff Bezos, and he was like, at some point in time, my only job is to make better and better decisions. He's like, so this is what we
Mm.
get paid to do at the highest level is to make good decisions that are going to lead us in the right direction. And he was like, I personally, from Jeff's perspective, need 8 hours of sleep per night. That sense of self-awareness that we're talking about, because I realize that I'm calmer, I'm not as flustered by information, and I make better, thoughtful decisions when I'm fully rested and I give myself the time and the space to recharge so I can put all of my effort into that one good decision that I'm making. And that's why, I've just been so enamored with that concept since I heard that a couple of years ago.
Yeah. And there's some interesting things that when I was looking into this that really stood out to me behind a bit of the science behind decision fatigue. And this one really goes to show that it's actually an energy thing. They did this study on people who kind of had to make decisions versus a control group who didn't have to make decisions. And the group of people who were making all those decisions had, this still blows me away, lower glucose levels than all the people who weren't making decisions. Because that's actually where your body's pulling that energy from to make
Wow.
the decision. Yeah, so it's not just like a weird kind of focus energy thing. It's your body's actually pulling through its energy resources
Mhm.
just to come up with decisions each day.
Wow. And I totally believe that. I mean, I think what we need to do is do a better job of holistically looking at our body, our mind as a whole system, right? In order for us to
Mm.
exude energy in one area, it has to come from somewhere else. And when that's all encompassing of all the processes in our mind. So if we're making decisions on a micro level here, 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 and here, where is that energy going? And more importantly, where is it being pulled from that we're now going to have a deficiency in? And so even hearing the glucose levels, that's incredible to kind of look at the body as a system that creates these different inputs and the different results as we start to make those decisions as well from an energetic perspective.
Yeah, it really amazed me to lean on to what you're saying there with how much important it is or how important it is to look after our body. And they say that, that energy comes first. And that's why I'm a big proponent of staying physically healthy, eating well, daily exercise, because it is all kind of attached, right?
Yeah.
Like our physical health and our mental energy are so intertwined, and you bridged it perfectly there with talking about it like that.
Well, here's a question for you. So I know that you're big on fitness. I always see you on the different social media platforms in the gym. So let me ask you this question. When you first wake up in the morning and you know you've got a big workout in front of you, are you more likely to go to the gym in the morning and knock that workout out compared to having a full day of work, full day of doing this type of stuff, creating content, and then realizing that you have a big exercise that you have to do at nighttime? Are your odds better of going in the morning or at night for you personally?
I'm so glad you asked that because it's something that I've been dealing with myself recently. For a while, I was like, I'm going to use the middle of my day to go do my workout because I spend a lot of time in front of my screen, and I'm like, oh, it'd be nice to step away from that screen for a little while and go to the gym.
Right.
What would happen though is that I usually sit down at my computer at about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I will be there for a while, and I have to actively get up and move. But by the time noon hits, I've already spent 4 hours usually doing heavy creative stuff. That's how I start my day. It's really hard to go to the gym after that, like really
Yes.
hard. Recently, I've been like, you know what? I'm going to get up and go to the gym first thing before my coffee, before anything. I get up, I grab a couple glasses of water, and I head to the gym. And it's way easier, and I pulled me way better throughout the day than trying to do it in the middle, or even I couldn't even imagine trying to do it at the end of the day.
I mean, that's
I
like, and
couldn't
so when
imagine.
I was looking into this and I was reading some studies, it talks about how decision fatigue in itself, right, decreases, or I'm sorry, when we make decisions, our energy decreases throughout the day, like you've been talking about. And the farther we get towards the end of our day, the less energy we have to make like real big decisions. Working out is a great one. And they found that people are more likely to make impulsive decisions and the easier choice when we are lower on energy. And so I was hoping that you were going to kind of align with what I was trying to get at here. But it's like more energy in the morning, better ability to make tough, hard decisions and put ourselves through change and adversity, like doing a big workout. Because I know
Mm-hmm.
at nighttime, dude, at the end of the day, after a long one, 5 o'clock comes around, I'm like, you know what? The gym's really not that important to me, you know?
I'll
And
go
so
extra
I
hard
fall in that.
tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. And I fall into that. And that's just really tough for me.
Yeah, I even find it hard to do like an enjoyable exercise, like going rock climbing, for example. Even that at the end of the day, I'm like, oh, I don't know, like I'm pretty tired.
Hmm.
And it's interesting that you say that it's got to do with like the good decisions that we're making, not just decisions in general, but making good ones. I think that's really valuable in this, and it's part of the reason that like a lot of sales tactics actually work. Because what they do is they force you to make decisions and all these decisions, right? And if you ever, the next time you're in a sales call with somebody or you're listening to something happen on a sales call, that's what a lot of it is. It's like, I'm going to make you make a decision on this and then this and then this. And by the end of the call, you're just exhausted and you're just like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to go with the easiest solution right now because
Yes.
you've actually burned out all of my decision making energy.
Beautiful way to tie that in, right? Because I've seen so many people that talk about like, let me just get you to say yes one time. And every other time you say yes, it's less and less resistance, less and less and less and less. So by the time we get to the end, you're going to be easy for me to lay down and kind of get exactly what I'm looking for in that
Mm-hmm.
transaction. That's awesome. That was a really good way to tie that in.
Yeah, it's neat when I love when kind of a concept that people talk about for a long time starts to tie through to something in science that says, no, this is why this works. This is why having somebody say yes X number of times or asking them to verify a question, this is why those things start to work. There's
Absolutely.
science behind that.
Yeah, and no, you and I both talk about this a lot, and it kind of in the content we've talked about this in previous conversations. But like, this is why things like habits are so important for us because they take away that decision making necessity because we start running on autopilot, right? And so that's when I think about like driving towards success. I would love for a majority of my decisions to be hardwired. So I don't even have to
Mm-hmm.
think about them. Going to the gym in the morning, let me establish that routine so I can get that hard decision out of the way, right? And then everything else kind of just like cascades downward from there. I just love kind of the science that's behind, you know, why we make better decisions, how we can enable ourselves to put ourselves closer to what we're trying to accomplish. That stuff is just like a huge passion for me.
Yeah, you've read the Atomic Habits by
Oh
James
yeah,
Clear. He
absolutely.
talks about it a lot in there, and I've read it in other books as well. But there's this theory that if we had to actively make decisions on everything that we did, our body would be done by the afternoon and we couldn't do it. And that's why we have habits. It's our body's way of literally being a more efficient machine. And you touched on it exactly. those habits are really important. And that's why it's so important that they're good habits, because your body's going to fall into that habit. It doesn't matter if it's bad, if it's an unhealthy habit, if that habit is to hit the snooze button 10 times, right? Like that's just a habit your body will do sheerly out of the reason that it wants to conserve the amount of energy it has throughout the day.
And those decisions are easy. I think about the snooze button as a perfect one, right? It's just like first time I hit the snooze, I'm like, oh, I shouldn't do it. Second time it goes off, a little bit easier, a little bit easier, and now I'm sleeping way past when I should. You know,
Pretty soon the alarm's just off and it's not even on anymore.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, one of my favorite things that you've kind of touched on here today is really just the impacts, recognizing the impacts of the decisions that we make throughout the day, right? When we start with hard decisions, we're more likely to stick with those things. When we start with easy decisions, we're more likely to go down that path. And it really creates like a unique sense of accountability that I think we can start recognizing in the decisions that we choose to make, and then creating those habits like James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits that kind of put us on the narrow towards, what we want to accomplish. I think that's super cool.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely the biggest thing that I see out of this, and when we talk about decision fatigue is, and it's neat that we ended on this as well, is that drive to how important our habits are, right? And I think a lot of, even for myself, I do this all the time, spending some time making big decisions for yourself kind of early on in the day or the week or the month even, and then riding those decisions throughout the rest of the time period as well. I know you're big on the whole planning on Sunday for the week to come, so that when that Monday hits, you've already got the step up. You know what you're going to do on Monday morning. You know what you're going to do on Tuesday afternoon. You know what your goals are and what your main tasks are. I think that is such a huge driver to beat decision fatigue and essentially do more with taking less energy, like throughout your whole life.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate that. That's a big part of recognition for me. But that basically comes down to me recognizing what works for me. You know what I mean? And I think we all have that unique perspective on what works best for us. But I find, like you said, setting my week up on Sunday and getting started makes Monday mornings a lot easier to cruise into, because they feel like a Tuesday or a Wednesday instead of such a hurdle that I have to overcome to build up that momentum again. So I appreciate you recognizing that.
Hey, no worries. I've been trying to do it a lot more myself. I'm a Monday morning kind of person. I've been trying to push that back into like Sunday afternoon instead, so that I can come kind of firing on Monday morning with all that I have. As we kind of wrap up here, as always, love to kind of get the biggest impact that you've seen, we've talked about. For myself, it's the fact that there's actual science behind it. There's the fact that there's actually lower levels of glucose in your body after making a bunch of decisions. That for me was the biggest takeaway that I found when looking into this. How about yourself?
I think that I totally agree. I love when there is hard science that we can actually recall when we talk about these topics, because often it's just so foo-foo, right? And people are always like, well, there's no real data behind that. But when you can make a business case, right, for why you should be eliminating all of these micro decisions and the impact that we can see on our own lives, I think that's when it becomes really powerful. And that's what people can lean into if they're looking for a little bit of proof as well.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Keenan, as always, for sitting down, talking with these important stuff. This one, guys, was a little bit of discussion on decision fatigue and why that's so important. If you've liked this, I encourage you to go check out all the other chats we've had on the podcast. If you've liked what Keenan's talking about, go check him out on his socials at Keenan Hart, and check out what Francis is doing with